Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Hurricane Outlook and discussion time. Obviously, the big story right now and for the next several days will be Tropical Storm Elsa out there east of the Windward Islands, heading in that direction, and we're going to talk about impacts, what people there can expect, and then down the road a piece, the Greater Antilles possibly in play, maybe Jamaica, and eventually the Keys of Florida, perhaps, the west coast of Florida, the peninsula as a whole. A lot of people interested in what happens with this, and rightfully so. It's a tropical storm here in the very early part of July. It is the earliest fifth named storm on record, which kind of means something, kind of doesn't. You know, we have a lot better tools now than we did 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago, certainly. And so more systems get named because we have better technology to detect even small areas of tropical storm force winds. And so more systems are getting named because we really have better technology now, and they're not falling through the cracks like they would many years ago when we don't have things like scatterometer data, microwave data related to that. But anyway, that all being said, Elsa is the earliest fifth named storm if you're keeping track. And who isn't, right? All right, so looking at the satellite imagery here, actually a bunch of them put together, we call that a satellite loop, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. And we see Elsa down here, fairly well developed. Pretty dry air all to its north here. The Saharan air layer very prevalent. And Elsa having to stay in a low latitude position to avoid that. Another tropical disturbance over here, and then yet another one coming off of Africa. And I'm going to end today's discussion, the meat and potatoes of it anyway, with a very concerning tweet from our friend Ben Noel down in New Zealand that kind of explains all of this and what is likely coming as we go forward. But for now, we have Elsa down here. There's 95L, or what's left of it. That moved through the islands yesterday, bringing some inclement weather through that area. Now, the northern part of that affecting the Virgin Islands, and this whole mess will just generally move through the Caribbean, bringing some showers and thunderstorms from time to time, maybe some gusty winds, and that is about it. So looking at the track map, this is from the HurricaneTrack Insider site, our enhanced tracking map. And you can see the path of Elsa here. What I really like about this, I'm telling you, I love it, is we can zoom in and see where this is forecast to go. And of course, this is just for the center of circulation here. This tells us nothing of the impacts. And the cone of uncertainty is where that center should be most of the time. That also tells you nothing of the impacts. So let's make that very clear. The black dot with an S in it, and then the cone there that we have blue on our map here, doesn't tell you about what to expect in terms of impacts. That just tells you where the center is forecast to be, and that it should stay within the cone most of the time, based on past guidance. And the cone is getting smaller, luckily, because computer model forecasts are getting better, but it still doesn't tell you what you're going to expect or what to expect, and nobody knows for sure. But I think just common sense would tell you that you got a tropical storm coming through here if the center were to pass like that. And you got Barbados to the north, and you go back and you look at the satellite picture and you say, okay, well, that's a pretty big storm overall. You know, if you take this whole mass of energy and move it this way, there's Barbados. Yeah, they're going to have some impacts. Onshore flow, the possibility of heavy rain, squally conditions, especially on the eastward facing side initially as those bands come through from this way, right, as the storm passes through. Same thing up here in St. Lucia, onshore flow, the east side. Any rising motion that the mountains provide will wring out. We call that orographic lift. It'll wring out some of that moisture. You could get some heavier rain bands in there, heavier rain totals. And then the littler, smaller islands in between, down here between St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This whole area will see impacts. And it's, if we expand out a little bit, you can bet that as this goes by, maybe some northwest flow coming around, impacting Trinidad and Tobago, perhaps, Grenada. So the bottom line is everybody down in this area definitely needs to be watching closely because you're going to have impacts. And just the heavy rain alone, I cannot emphasize it enough, that is a major hazard. Just real quick, going back and looking at Harvey, knowing what we know now about how much rainfall that dropped, and that we knew that it was possible that it would drop 40, 50 inches of rain, I if I could wave some magic wand and create a new scale and an alert system for people, would have said Harvey is going to be a Category 5 disaster, if you want to assign numbers to stuff, because of the rainfall. We're so fixated on the long-standing scale, the Saffir-Simpson hurricane damage potential scale that's based on wind and the damage that is expected to occur because of that wind from two different brilliant engineers and scientists. I just think it needs to be updated, and we need to make sure that rain is right up there, because too much rain can really cause problems, and it's just amazing how quickly people forget that. We get so fixated on terms like tropical storm or hurricane, and then categories. Well, down here, as this goes through, you will see, thanks to social media, there will be impacts. Probably some heavy flooding and, maybe even loss of life. I hope not, but these things do bring that, even when they are, quote, weak tropical storms. All right, so then it goes through the Caribbean, maybe clipping southwest Haiti. We'll have to wait and see. Could come closer to Hispaniola. It could come, track farther to the south, maybe closer to Jamaica. This is farther out into time, or further out in time, whatever. And so, there's a lot of uncertainty here in the days beyond about, 72 hours. It really does become harder to figure out what's going to happen. But certainly Haiti, through almost all of Cuba, and Jamaica, the Florida Keys, everybody in here needs to be watching. And yes, it is possible that this becomes a hurricane, and that does raise the stakes. I get it, sure, because that brings hurricane force wind, and that starts to do other damage. So here are the key takeaways. Appreciate CJ putting this together for me. Encapsulating what the Hurricane Center puts out. We're just regurgitating that, but in a different format. And so this is the local time, 2 p.m. Eastern, my time and Atlantic Standard Time. I guess that's the same thing. But anyway, it's the latest update, the intermediate advisory, and not much has changed. Tropical storm conditions expected down in the Leeward Islands. We just talked about that. And there's the heavy rainfall. That's a big problem. And then the risk of rainfall in parts of the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Turks and Caicos, etc. That's a big area. That's a lot of people. As this goes through, there is some risk up here in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and beyond, the Southeast Bahamas. And then, of course, here's the bullet point about Florida. Too soon to know for sure. You know the drill, folks, if you live down there. We got to watch and wait and see how things evolve. There's the vorticity signature, and it's pretty stout overall. That's the other one out there in the deep tropics, way south. And by the way, the GFS does try to develop this one a little bit as it approaches the southern windwards. So you definitely want to keep your eyes on this. Again, it could just bring heavy rain, and that by itself could be a big issue. So we'll watch all of this. All right, so here's one key component to the whole thing. Water temperatures and upper ocean heat content. Now that Elsa is west of 50 degrees of longitude, which is right here, it is going to start feeling more and more of this warmer water by way of higher ocean heat content values. That is to say that it's not just at the surface. You got your skin right here, and it's what's below that. And in this case, the skin of the ocean could be 85, 90 degrees, but if 100 feet below, it's 65 degrees. As soon as you start churning up that water a little bit or blowing wind across it, agitating it, you bring up that cooler water, you upwell it, as it's called, and you start to self-destruct the storm. Well, the more of this upper ocean heat content you have, the more energy is available, and all along Elsa's path, especially over here in the Northwest Caribbean, there's plenty of it waiting. Very, very ample opportunity for this to strengthen if the upper level winds allow and there's not as much dry air as you would normally see this time of year. I mean, after all, it's only July 1st. We're not typically supposed to see Cape Verde type systems developing, and this did. It came off Africa, made its way across, and here we are. So these upper ocean heat content values all along the path here, definitely favorable for this to strengthen down the road. All right, so let's look at the GFS here. The Western Atlantic Basin Domain map extent region. And let's point out what's what. That is the vorticity signature of Elsa. Fairly healthy, not particularly strong, which represents, I think, pretty well the current situation. Elsa is not particularly strong. It's still in its formative stage. This is another big player right here, the outline of the subtropical ridge. Very easy to see. This is a big old mountain of air sitting out here, so to speak, and it gets sort of thinner, if you will, the farther away from the center that you get. There's less resistance. And so if all things were equal and this didn't budge, Elsa could just go on through the Caribbean and end up in Central America. But that's not going to happen because this is constantly changing every second. And we don't look at it at every second. We look at it in maybe every hour, 3 hours, 6, 12, 24, whatever. But this is going to change over time. Its shape, its orientation, all kinds of stuff. So these are the different players. Let's see what happens. Again, I like this area of the atmosphere, the 5,000 foot level, 850 millibar vorticity, because if this looks healthy in the model, then it's probably going to look very healthy in reality. That's just a real simple way that I look at it. That's not necessarily how the Hurricane Center looks at it or your local meteorologist. We all have our methods. That is mine. So that being said, we're now out at 24 hours. So let's just go back. First 24 hours, it goes from, it's okay looking in the modeling, to, oh, that's a little bit more formidable just as it passes to the south of Barbados by tomorrow morning, and then into the Eastern Caribbean. Then it really starts to look solid there. Look at that. That vorticity signature, as I drop micro SD cards on my desk, is really, really impressive, okay? And it's on the southwest side of this high-pressure area. There's a trough coming off the east coast. And if this had been earlier, it would get caught in that trough and out it goes. But GFS doesn't think that's going to happen, so to speak. All right, so that's 48 hours. Let's keep on going. It goes to the south of Haiti on this run, the 12Z run. Then very close to, or perhaps over Jamaica, we'll have to see about that, between days 3 and 4. Finally, at 84 hours to the south of Cuba, coming across there at 102. And then look, real quick, this is important right there. That's coming into the frame, and we need to pay attention because that could be another big rainmaker coming in towards the Windward Islands here. A yet-to-be designated disturbance, maybe 98L. Anyway, this is hour 102. We go out to 108, crossing Cuba, affecting the Keys, the dry Tortugas. And then, I mean, it's not that far from landfall. We see what happens. It comes on up by day 6 or so along the west coast of Florida. So rewinding it and watching how this evolves, that's a very, very potent-looking system overall. You know, that it comes in there. I say very, I mean relatively speaking for July. It looks like a hurricane in the model. And so let's just look at a couple things real quick. At hour 120, this is 5,000 feet. What about way up at about 40,000 feet or so? The outflow level. What does it look like up there? And this is part of the analysis. Down at the surface, I just showed you, everything looks pretty good in the model down at the surface, so to speak. Well, 5,000 feet or so. That vorticity, the heart, there you go, that's a good word of it. The heart of Elsa. Don't even get me started. Not going there. But I'm serious. The heart of this system, if you want to call it that, that vorticity signature, the low-level vorticity, is very, very much intact, as I showed you on that last chart. So what about the upper levels? Well, there's the low-level center at hour 120. You see it right there. And look at what we have. For those of you that know what you're looking at, you know. Very strong outward motion. The poleward outflow channel, if you will, all of this air going away from Elsa. Nothing is coming across like that. You understand? So as an example, look out here in the Atlantic. See how this wind is all going this way, and you look at the color code, and it's pretty strong? You do not have that down here. And in fact, you have a poleward outflow channel where you would see the air coming out of this, and it would look pretty incredible on satellite. In fact, you can see, where is it, what this looks like, I think, on the satellite. Yeah, here we go. Simulated IR satellite. This only goes out to hour 115, but you get the idea. It's a simulated satellite picture from the GFS, And there's that outflow channel right there. It moves up into the region, helping to evacuate that air out. I'm just telling you, I am not going to be shocked at all if this becomes a hurricane. That's not the same as saying I'm forecasting it to become a hurricane. It looks pretty healthy in the model here. And this is just one model. This is the GFS. There's lots of others, the Canadian, the Euro, all the different hurricane-based models, the HMON, the HWRF. I mean, we could be here for an hour talking about this. We just don't have that kind of time. So let's look at one of them anyway, the HWRF. And this is sort of the simulated radar, if you will. And the surface pressure, 1,004 millibars. It's what it's showing at about 6 hours out from initialization, which will be about right now. So it's not particularly strong, but we move this through time, and you see what happens. It goes south of Barbados by about early tomorrow afternoon, through the Windward Islands with all kinds of rain bands, and it is strengthening, at least according to the HWRF. And it probably would be a hurricane in the model. Pressure's down in the upper 970s, you bet. And it goes south of Hispaniola, which is up on the top of the screen there, and then really ramping up, pretty formidable, solid core, north of Jamaica, across the southern tip of Cuba by just a little bit, and then finally out by day 4, crossing Cuba, and then up into the southeast Gulf of Mexico by 126 hours or so. A fairly, for July, again, early season, that would be a decent hurricane. 981 on the pressure, certainly. So, we got to watch. We got to be ready. We got to, take this seriously, but don't get too amped up about it just yet, because we don't know. There's a lot of uncertainties. First, our good friends down in the islands, they're going to have to deal with this, and I want to make sure you guys are ready. That heavy rain, the lightning that could come in there, and that's a big key, too. Let's see how much lightning this puts out as it goes by, because if it can throw out a lot of lightning while it's getting stronger, that's an indication of a lot of instability and the energy that's trying to get bundled down there in the Eastern Caribbean. Not like when you get lightning from a thunderstorm over the Great Plains, which is dry air battling a frontal zone. When you get lightning in tropical systems, that's a sign of a very intense upward motion. So that's something to watch for as well. And speaking of watching, wow, this tweet from Ben today definitely set off a lot of alarm bells across the weather blogosphere, if you will. And I mean, you don't usually see Ben start off with wow, but there it is. Wow, the latest JMA, that's the Japanese Meteorological Agency, weeklies are going full throttle in the Atlantic by late July. All that green is anomalous upward motion. It's upward motion in the atmosphere that is much more than is what is normally seen. And this starts out all the way through July there and really starts to get amped up. All that green sitting over, let's see what color I can use. We'll outline it in white. There's Africa right there. Here's the east coast of the United States. There's South America. All this upward motion really focusing. This is the 10th, the 17th, and the 24th of July, really starting to get amped up. I mean, it could be that we're just starting to see the potential of this hurricane season come to fruition, as he says. Looks like it's going to be a long hurricane season. All right, if you want to join up and help out with what we're doing, plus get inside information, I mean, literally, we take you out there with us. Nobody else does that like we do. The field work side of our operation is second to none, and it is crowdfunded by awesome people all over the world through Patreon. That's a website and an app that you use that we connect using your membership to our HurricaneTrack Insider site, our live cameras, the interactive tracking map. This guy right here, it's part of it. And then we turn on our cameras when we have action going on out there. See? Well, there it is. One more time, Mark. There they are. Cameras. Yep, like this one down in St. John. Beautiful day down there. Yes, you get access to this. That's how we do it, through Patreon. At $10 a month, you get everything I just mentioned plus more. And then at $25 a month, we include the Zoom meetings. And we're going to actually be having one of those tomorrow afternoon at, I think, 4 o'clock Eastern Time. So that's how we do it, through Patreon. The link in today's video description. If you're in the position to become part of this growing community, over 600 strong, that's what we do with it. We are crowdfunded, and boy, I'm telling you, We have come a long way with it, and I'm super proud of it all. People helping out with these background graphics. I mean, it's a team effort, and that's what it's all about. All right, so that is it from me for today. We'll keep a watch on what's going on with Elsa over the coming hours and days. And then, yes, it looks like I would potentially be heading down to Florida starting Monday, and we'll talk about that more tomorrow, certainly. I know we got a big weekend coming up, the 4th of July and all that. This is the last thing we need, but we can't ignore it. It's out there. We got to deal with it, and I'll try to help you do the best I can. All right? As always, thanks for tuning in and giving me a part of your day. I greatly appreciate it. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. We'll talk about it again tomorrow.